The raven arrived like an accusation. Maester Wolkan's hands shook as he unbound the scroll, and even before he read, the hall felt it. The way men leaned in, the way breath grew loud, the way every crackle of torchfire sounded too bright. Snow hissed against the shutters as if the storm outside pressed its ear to Winterfell's walls. Sansa Stark took the parchment without ceremony. She read once, eyes moving fast. Then she read again, slower, as if the second pass might make the words less real. It did not. Her face did not collapse. It did not twist. It simply went still, the way a lake went still before ice sealed it. Arianne Martell stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. The Dornish princess' jaw tightened until it looked like stone could crack between her teeth. Jon Snow did not need the ink. He felt it in his bones already, the heavy wrongness that had been building since Eastwatch. Still, he watched Sansa's eyes, because Sansa's eyes were Winterfell's eyes now. "The wall," Sansa said, and her voice was quiet enough to make everyone strain to hear. "It has broken." A murmur surged. Prayers, curses, disbelief, then died under Sansa's lifted hand. Silence fell hard again. Cotter Pike took a step forward, ice still clinging in the seams of his beard, his cheeks raw with windburn. He looked like a man who had been chewed by winter and spit out angry. "Broke," he snarled, and the word came out like a fist. Not cracked, not shuddered, broke. Tormund Giantsbane let out a low whistle. "That's a big bloody door," he muttered. Pike rounded on him. "It's not a door," he barked. "It's a floodgate." Jon's hands tightened on the table edge. "How wide?" he asked Pike, forcing the question through the knot in his throat. Pike's eyes flashed. "Wide enough for your whole damn pride to fall through," he spat. Then he forced breath into himself and answered like a commander who had learned to speak in numbers. "A breach near where Eastwatch used to be. Wights pouring through. White walkers behind. The Night King watching like he's admiring his work." Maester Wolkan's lips moved soundlessly, a prayer he did not dare make loud. Ser Raleigh Duckfield stood near the hall's edge with 2 Golden Company men. Their foreign cloaks dusted with snow, their faces tight. They looked like soldiers who had marched into a nightmare and were still deciding whether nightmares could be killed. Sansa set the scroll down, flattening it with her palm as if she could pin reality to wood. "Then we stop pretending this is coming," she said softly. "It's here." Arianne's eyes swept the hall. "The lords, the soldiers, the servants. Then you evacuate the villages," she said, voice sharp. "You don't let them be taken and turned. Every living body you save is one less dead body you fight later." Lord Glover's mouth tightened. "And abandon land?" he demanded. Jon's gaze cut to him, cold enough to freeze the question. "Land doesn't breathe," Jon said. "People do." Sansa's eyes hardened. "Winterfell becomes the anvil," she said. "Everything that can move comes here. Everything that can fight stands here. And everything that can't fight." Her voice tightened, just slightly. "We put behind stone and fire." Pike's laugh was broken and sharp. "Stone," he rasped. "They climb stone. They climb bodies too." Jon straightened. "Then we give them fire and dragonglass on every inch," he said. "And we make every step cost them." Arianne's gaze locked on him. "And Sunsorrow?" she asked. From the courtyard outside, as if summoned by its own name, a low rumble rolled through Winterfell stone. Deep, impatient, alive. The dragon was awake. The dragon listened. Jon's voice dropped. "Sunsorrow flies," he said. "It burns the vanguard. It buys time." Sansa's hand snapped out, gripping his sleeve. "And the Night King?" she asked quietly. Jon looked at her, and for a heartbeat he saw his father's grave and his sister's face and the wall cracking like bone. "We find what kills him," Jon said, "before he reaches us." By morning the castle sounded different. Winterfell had always carried noise. Boots, hammers, voices. But now it was tighter, sharper, as if every sound had been honed. Smiths worked without pause, the ring of metal on metal constant as a heartbeat. Dragonglass was chipped and bound to spearheads and arrows until black shards littered the floors like spilled teeth. Men trained in the yard until their lungs bled in the cold. On the battlements, Jon stood with Sansa Stark and Arianne Martell, looking out at the world turning white and grim. The wind cut, snow fell sideways. Beyond the walls, the King's Road was a dark line through pale drifts, and on it moved a thin, crawling column. Refugees pushed south by terror, carts creaking, bundled shapes stumbling. Tormund Giantsbane spat over the parapet. "They'll die on the road if we don't pull them in," he muttered. Sansa's jaw clenched. "We pull as many as we can," she said. "And we feed them what we have." Arianne's eyes narrowed. "And we ration," she said. "And we make sure no lord hoards while children freeze." Below them, Sunsorrow rested in the courtyard like a dark mountain. Steam curled from its nostrils, turning falling snow to mist near its head. The tear in its wing membrane, ragged, scarred, showed each time the dragon shifted. The wound looked wrong on something so powerful, like a crack in a sword that should never break. Smiths had tried to approach with heated irons and thick leather strips to bind the torn edge, but the dragon's tail had lashed and cracked stone, and men had backed away pale and shaking. Only when Jon had laid his bandaged hand to Sunsorrow's muzzle and pressed calm into his blood had the beast allowed anyone near at all. Even then, it was grudging. Sansa's gaze flicked down to the dragon, then back to the horizon. "How far can it fly wounded?" she asked Jon. Jon watched Sunsorrow's slow breathing. "Far enough," he said. "Not forever, but far enough." Arianne's mouth tightened. "Then use it wisely," she said. "Not for pride, not for rage." Jon's eyes met hers. "I know," he said. On the yard below, Ser Raleigh Duckfield drilled his men beside northern soldiers. The Golden Company's discipline looked strange against the North's brutal pragmatism, but the movements began to match, shield walls tightening, spear points rising and falling as one. Men learned quickly when the alternative was being torn open by hands that didn't tire. Sansa's hand tightened on the battlement stone. "We need dragonglass," she said. "More than we can chip from what we have." Arianne nodded once. "Dragonstone," she said. "We send ships. We send escorts. We strip that island bare." Jon's gaze went north, far beyond sight. "And I fly," he said. "I slow them. I pull survivors back. I learn the Night King's pace." Sansa's voice was quiet, sharp. "You come back," she said. Jon looked at her, his sister, his queen in all but name. "I will," he promised, and he hated how the promise tasted. Tormund grinned faintly, fierce. "If you die," he said, "I'll tell the dead you were boring." Jon snorted a breath. "That's the worst threat I've heard," he muttered. Arianne's eyes stayed on the refugee line. "Bring them in," she said, "because every village left behind becomes an army against us." Sansa lifted her hand and called down orders to the yard. Gates would open again. Carts would be pulled in. Winterfell would become a mouth for the living. And beyond the horizon, unseen but certain, the dead marched toward it like a storm that did not stop for walls. Jon did not wait for the dead to knock politely. He flew over the gift with Sunsorrow's shadow skimming the snow like a moving night. Below, Tormund Giantsbane and a hard knot of northern riders pushed along the treeline, their horses steaming, their fur cloaks stiff with frost. Refugees stumbled ahead of them, families dragging bundles, children carried half-limp in arms that shook with exhaustion. The first white scouts found them near a frozen stream. They moved through the trees with the wrong kind of quiet, bodies jerking in awkward angles, eyes glowing faintly blue through shadow. They did not shout. They did not threaten. They simply came, hands reaching, hunger that wasn't hunger pulling them forward. A child screamed, high and thin, and the sound snapped the living into frantic motion. "Move," Tormund bellowed. "Keep moving or you'll be moving forever." Jon felt Sunsorrow's attention sharpen. The dragon's throat glow-stirred, eager. The beast wanted to scour the treeline clean, to turn every shadow into ash. Jon forced his breath slow. "Small," he murmured. Sunsorrow snarled smoke, offended by restraint, but angled its head. A thin spear of flame lanced down, cutting across the first cluster of wights. They ignited instantly, collapsing into blackened limbs. Snow hissed, steam rose. The smell of burnt rot hit Jon even at height, heavy and sick. More wights poured from the trees, drawn by sound, by movement, by the simple truth that living bodies were warm. Tormund's riders met them with dragonglass spears, black points punching into frozen flesh. Where the black glass struck true, wights spasmed and fell, not dead in the way men died, but broken, their unnatural animation collapsing like a severed string. A northern man took a wight's claw to the face, blood spraying bright against snow. He screamed and dropped. The wight climbed on him, hands closing. Tormund roared and drove his spear through its back, then yanked it free and smashed the butt into its skull until it stopped moving. "Get them out!" he shouted at the refugees. "Don't look back." Jon swung Sunsorrow in a tight circle, keeping the dragon low enough to intimidate wights and high enough to avoid the treetops. The wounded wing flapped unevenly, and Jon's stomach clenched each time it shuddered. A wrong beat could send them tumbling into branches and claws. A woman in a patched cloak stumbled, slipping on ice. She fell hard, breath knocked out. Two wights broke from the tree-line toward her, arms outstretched. Jon pointed his whole body at them, intent like a knife. Sunsorrow exhaled a narrow flame line. The wights burst into fire mid-stride, collapsing into twitching ruin inches from the woman's boots. She stared, frozen in shock, then scrambled up and ran, sobbing. Tormund glanced up at Jon, teeth bared in a grin that was half triumph, half despair. "That's it," he shouted. "Make them fear the sky." Jon did not answer. His eyes searched beyond the tree-line, beyond the smoke, beyond the burning scouts. He saw something that tightened his gut. Not wights, tracks, deep, clean impressions in snow where something tall had walked without slipping. Around them, frost had crept in delicate patterns, too perfect, too deliberate. White walkers were near. Jon's bandaged hands tightened on the ridges. He swung Sunsorrow higher, scanning the horizon. The refugee line kept moving, pushed by terror, sheltered briefly by fire. And somewhere ahead, the real storm waited, quiet, patient, intelligent. The ambush came from silence. A frozen clearing opened ahead, a break in the trees where wind scoured snow into hard crust. The refugees poured into it like water released, desperate for open ground, desperate for speed. Then the cold deepened, not the ordinary cold that bit fingers and made men curse. This was heavier, pressed into lungs. It made breath feel like swallowing glass. Wights surged from both sides of the clearing, pouring out of the trees in a tide of blue eyes and black hands. They moved faster than before, as if commanded, as if whipped. Tormund's riders skidded to a halt, horses screaming. Men threw themselves into a line, shields up, dragonglass spears angled. "Hold!" Tormund roared. "Hold or die running." Jon felt Sunsorrow snarl beneath him, offended by the sudden pressure, the unnatural cold that dared challenge dragon heat. The dragon's throat glow brightened. A spear of ice shot up. It came from the tree-line, not thrown by a wight, but by something precise. The ice spear whistled, cutting through air like a shard of moonlight. Jon forced Sunsorrow into a hard bank. The spear tore past the dragon's wounded wing, close enough that frost sprayed, biting scale. Sunsorrow roared, rage and pain, and beat its wings violently, snow exploding beneath. Jon's stomach lurched. Another inch and the spear would have pinned membrane. Another inch and they would have fallen into the clearing like meat. He leaned forward, voice torn by wind. "Now!" Sunsorrow dove low, so low the dragon's shadow swallowed men. Heat blasted outward as it passed, turning snow to steam and making wights flinch. Not fear, but reflex. Jon forced the dragon's head to angle toward the densest cluster near the refugee line. "Small," he hissed through clenched teeth. Sunsorrow wanted to flood. The dragon wanted to erase the clearing in one red roar. Jon pressed restraint into his blood like a hand around a throat. A thin lance of flame shot out, cutting a line through wights at the clearing center. Bodies ignited, collapsing, creating a burning barrier the refugees could dart around. The fire was a blade, not a torch. Tormund seized the opening. He charged into the gap with a bellow, dragging 2 refugees by their collars and shoving them toward safety. A northern fighter beside him drove a dragonglass spear into a wight's mouth, twisting until the skull cracked and the body fell limp. More ice spears rose from the trees. Jon finally saw the thrower. A white walker stepped into the clearing's edge like winter-given limbs, tall, pale, armor catching light like frosted glass. Its eyes glowed blue and calm. It lifted its spear slowly, almost lazily, as if this were hunting, not war. Jon's blood turned to iron. He angled Sunsorrow toward it. "Burn," he whispered. Sunsorrow inhaled, throat glowing brighter. Jon unleashed a heavier blast, wider than a spear-thin thread, not yet a full river. Flame surged toward the White Walker. The cold answered. A pale shimmer rose like frost made into a wall. The fire hit it and broke, hissing into steam, scattering into ragged tongues that died in air. The White Walker did not flinch. It raised its spear again, eyes fixed on Sunsorrow's wing like a butcher choosing where to cut. Jon's mouth went dry. Fire wouldn't solve this. Not alone. Not like this. Jon did something reckless because waiting was death. He drove Sunsorrow lower, forcing the dragon into the clearing's edge where trees crowded and wind churned steam. The White Walker lifted its spear again, calm as a surgeon. Jon's hand found Longclaw's hilt. He had not drawn it since Eastwatch, not properly, not with intention. The Valyrian steel felt cold in his palm and then not cold at all, as if it recognized what it had been made to cut. Jon yanked on the ridges and shifted his weight, guiding Sunsorrow into a brief hover, the dragon's wings beating hard enough to throw snow into a blinding swirl. For a heartbeat the world became white chaos. Then Jon let go. He dropped. Cold slammed into him. He hit the snow hard, rolled, came up with Longclaw already lifted. Pain flared in his bandaged hands, but he ignored it. Pain was smaller than death. The White Walker turned toward him with slow, deliberate surprise. Its face was still, almost curious, as if it had not expected prey to leap into its teeth. It moved with impossible grace. The ice spear came down in a sweeping arc meant to take Jon's head from his shoulders. Jon brought Longclaw up. Steel met ice. The sound was wrong, sharp, ringing, like glass struck by a bell. Frost sprayed. Jon's arms jolted as if he'd caught a falling tree. For a heartbeat he expected Longclaw to shatter. It did not. The Valyrian steel held. The White Walker's blue eyes narrowed. The first flicker of emotion Jon had seen. Irritation, then something colder. The thrust. Jon twisted aside, the spear's tip grazing his shoulder, cold burning through leather like fire. His skin screamed. He nearly dropped. He did not. He stepped in, closing distance because reach was death. The White Walker flowed backward, light on snow, spear spinning. Jon followed, heart hammering, breath tearing in white clouds. Behind him, Tormund roared, fighting wights with a dragonglass spear, keeping the line from collapsing while Jon gambled everything on one duel. Refugees stumbled past, sobbing, slipping, running. Sunsorrow screamed above, furious at being forced to hover, furious at the cold wall, furious at the White Walker daring to threaten its wing. The dragon's roar shook snow from branches. The White Walker fainted low and snapped the spear upward toward Jon's throat. Jon moved without thought. Longclaw cut across in a brutal diagonal swing. Valyrian steel bit. The blade struck the White Walker's chest, and for a heartbeat there was resistance, like cutting into hard ice. Then the resistance gave way. A crack ran through pale armor. The White Walker's eyes widened, the calm finally breaking. The creature shattered. Not fell. Shattered. Exploding into glittering shards of ice that burst outward and vanished into snow. For a breath, The clearing went impossibly silent. Then the wights collapsed. Bodies that had been mid-lunge dropped like puppets with cut strings. Hands slack, jaws hanging, blue eyes dimming into nothing. A wave of them fell at once. A sudden ruin of limbs and rot. Tormund stared, panting, then barked a laugh so loud it sounded like a scream. "That's it," he roared. "That's the trick." Jon's knees nearly buckled. Relief hit like a wave, followed instantly by dread. If one White Walker's death could drop its wights, then they were not fighting an endless tide. They were fighting commanders. But how many commanders stood behind the Night King? Jon looked up. Sunsorrow swooped lower, steam rolling from its nostrils, and Jon felt the dragon's furious satisfaction like heat in his chest. The beast had watched a different kind of weapon win where flame faltered. Jon raised long claw, blade dark and wet with melted frost, and shouted until his throat tore. "Valyrian steel works, dragonglass works, aim for them." The men heard. Hope moved through the living line like fire catching dry kindling. And far away, beyond the tree-line, a deeper cold watched and learned. Winterfell became a forge, not just in the smithy, where fires burned day and night, but in every corridor and yard where fear was hammered into purpose. Dragonglass was brought in from every cache they could scrape. Small shards from old stores, rough chunks traded for at White Harbor, black stone that had once been treated like superstition and now was handled like sacred metal. Sansa Stark moved through it all like a blade. She watched smiths lash obsidian to spearheads with wire and resin. She watched women string arrows until fingers bled. She watched children carry bowls of stew to men drilling until their arms shook. She spoke little, but every word she did speak became law. Arianne Martell turned logistics into war. She stood with Davos Seaworth and Lord Wyman Manderley over ledgers and maps, arguing over carts, ration lines, and which villages could be emptied fastest without freezing everyone on the road. Where northern pride snarled at southern advice, Arianne simply stared until the pride retreated, because starvation did not respect insult. "We cut portions now," Arianne said, voice hard. "Not later. Later is famine." Wyman grunted, reluctant but intelligent. He rumbled. "The North can stomach hunger, cannot stomach stupidity." Davos jabbed a finger at a rough map. "Dragonstone," he said again. "If we can get one more run, we can triple this." Triple. Sansa's eyes stayed on the piles of dragonglass. "Then you'll go," she said to Davos, "and you'll take ships that can fight, not just run." Arianne's jaw clenched. "I go with him," she said immediately. Sansa's gaze snapped to her. "You are not leaving Winterfell," she said, cold as stone. Arianne's eyes flared. "This is my war too," she snapped. Sansa did not blink. "Then lead here," she said. "If you die on a ship, Dorne loses its spear, and I lose the only southern ruler who understands what this costs." Arianne's mouth tightened. Hate and reluctant respect tangled. She swallowed, nodding once, sharp. "Then I stay," she said, "and I make sure your ships don't starve us." In the courtyard, Sunsorrow rested, steam curling into snow. The wounded wing was being tended clumsily, carefully, by smiths under Jon Snow's watch. Thick leather straps were heated and pressed, not to heal, but to bind, to support, to keep torn membrane from ripping wider on the next hard flight. The dragon hated it. Sunsorrow's tail lashed, cracking ice. His throat glowed in warning. Men backed away pale. Only when Jon laid his hand on the dragon's muzzle and pressed calm into his blood did the beast allow the straps to be secured. Arianne watched from a distance, hands clenched in her cloak. She hated the way the dragon accepted Jon and rejected the rest. She hated the way that bond made him both stronger and more alone. Sansa stepped beside her, quiet. "He's out there," she said, meaning the Trilene, the gift, death. Arianne's voice was low. "And he found a way to kill them," she replied. "Not with fire, with steel." Sansa's eyes narrowed. "Then we make steel bite everywhere," she said. They stood together in the yard, two women from different suns. watching men work like ants beneath a sky that threatened to break. Winterfell was no longer only a castle. It was a weapon being built in real time. In the Stormlands, the throne became a smaller thing. Aegon Targaryen stood over a map while rain tapped the canvas roof like impatient fingers. The Stormlands had always been wet, but now the damp felt like a warning, as if the south itself was remembering it could be cold too. A raven scroll lay open on the table, ink smeared in places as if written by shaking hands. The wall has broken. The dead pour south. Eastwatch lost. Prepare. The words had taken the air from the tent the moment they were read. Golden Company captains stood stiff, faces hard, trying to pretend they had not marched their whole lives for a crown that might never matter. Jon Connington stood to Aegon's right, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. His glove stayed on, one hand held slightly away from torchlight as if he feared what light might reveal. "We march north," Aegon said. It was not an argument. It was an announcement. One captain sputtered. "Your Grace, Storm's End, King's Landing." Aegon's purple eyes cut into him. "King's Landing can wait," he said. "The dead do not." Connington's voice snapped, sharp with desperation. "Marching north is suicide," he hissed. "We will bleed on roads before we ever see the enemy. Winter will eat your men." Aegon's gaze hardened. "Then we feed them," he said. "We move by sea where we can. We coordinate with White Harbor, with Dorne's convoy, with anyone who still breathes." Connington's mouth twisted. "And you trust the wolf?" he spat. "You trust the Martells? They will use this to bind you, to weaken you, to—" Aegon slammed his palm onto the map. "Enough," he said, and the tent went silent like a struck bell. "If they wanted to weaken me, they would have let the wall break in silence and watched me burn my strength on King's Landing. Instead, they sent warning. They sent ships. They sent men." Connington's face flushed. "Because the wolf rides a dragon," he said bitterly. Aegon's eyes narrowed. "And because the wolf was right," he said. The captain shifted uneasily. "Our claim," he began. Aegon's voice turned cold. "My claim," he said, "is meaningless if I am king of corpses. I did not cross the narrow sea to inherit a grave." The tent held its breath. Connington swallowed, the anger in him turning to something uglier. Fear that he could not say aloud. His gloved hand tightened. For a heartbeat, the edge of skin at his wrist showed beneath the cuff. Gray, rough, wrong. Then he tucked it back as if hiding a sin. Aegon noticed the movement. His eyes flicked, sharp, but he did not speak of it. Not now. Not while the realm cracked. "Send ravens," Aegon ordered. "Every lord who has bent to me sends men north. Every port I can reach sends grain. And if any lord refuses—" He paused, letting the threat hang. Connington's voice was tight. "You will make enemies," he warned. Aegon's mouth curved faintly, grim. "We already have enemies," he said. "I'd rather my enemies be alive." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, a dragon prince who had come for a crown finally chose duty over story. And somewhere far away, a wolf king rode fire into snow, buying time with blood and steel. King's Landing heard the wall had broken and did not mourn. Cersei Lannister stood at a window overlooking Blackwater Bay. The city spread beneath like a carpet of weak things. The sky was pale. The air was mild. Winter felt like a rumor here, the kind of story peasants told to scare children into obedience. Qyburn held the report, voice soft. "The wall breach is confirmed," he murmured. "The dead are moving." Cersei's smile was thin. "Let them move," she said. Qyburn's brows lifted slightly. "If the north falls," he said carefully, "the realm weakens. Chaos spreads." Cersei turned, eyes gleaming. "Chaos is an opportunity," she replied. "If wolves and dragons and pretender princes all march north to die, then the south belongs to the lion." Qyburn inclined his head, as if amused. "And if a dragon returns south?" he asked. Cersei's gaze slid to the shadow jars along the wall. Wildfire sleeping green, patient. "Then I burn it," she said simply. And I burn the city if I must. I will not kneel to fire. Qyburn's voice remained gentle. There are other ways, he said. Sea roads, supplies. If White Harbor becomes the realm's throat, we can close it. Cersei's eyes narrowed. Dragonstone, she said, and the name came out like an old hate. If they go for dragonglass, they will go there. Qyburn unrolled a map. White Harbor, Dragonstone, the narrow sea routes marked with neat lines. We can place knives in the water, he murmured. Sell sails, pirates. The stepstones are already hungry. Cersei's mouth curled. Feed them, she said. Gold for blood. If the north starves, the dead win for me. Qyburn's lips twitched. And the Dornish princess? He asked. Cersei's eyes sharpened. If she survives the cold, she will become dangerous, she said. Dangerous women gather others. I do not allow that. She turned back to the window, staring at her city. Send another, she ordered. Not a traitor this time. Not a fool with a needle in a box. Send someone who can disappear into snow and leave a corpse that looks like winter. Qyburn bowed. As you command. Ser Robert Strong stood behind her like a silent threat, metal and dead obedience. Cersei's fingers tightened on the report until the parchment creased. Let them believe they're uniting, she whispered. Let them feel noble. Her eyes hardened. Nobility freezes, she said, and lions eat what freezes. Beyond the bay, ships moved like slow insects. And far north, under a sky of storm and ash snow, Winterfell dug trenches and sharpened black glass, unaware that the south had decided to make their salvation bleed. The first true sighting came at dusk. Scouts returned with eyes too wide, faces too pale. They did not talk of rumors now. They talked of a line on the horizon that moved without sound. They're coming, one man whispered, and the whisper carried through Winterfell like smoke. Sansa Stark went to the walls. Arianne Martell went with her. Below, men moved into positions that had been argued over and dug into reality. Trenches carved into frozen earth, lined with pitch, torches set at intervals like a string of small stubborn suns. Spears with dragonglass tips formed ranks. Archers stood ready with black-pointed arrows. Golden Company soldiers held the right flank, their discipline tight, their breath steaming. Arianne rode the line, shouting orders to wagons and runners, her voice cutting through wind. Keep the food behind the second trench, she snapped. No one eats at the line unless they're fighting. If you die with a mouthful of stew, you're an idiot. A few men laughed nervously. The laughter broke quickly, swallowed by the cold. On the walls, Sansa's eyes searched the darkening tree-line. Snow fell in thin flakes that caught torchlight and vanished. Her hands did not tremble. Her jaw did not loosen. She looked like a queen carved from frost. Where is Jon? She asked quietly. Arianne's gaze lifted to the sky. Sunsorrow circled above Winterfell, shadow passing over the trenches like a moving omen. Jon Snow rode low, controlling the dragon's impatience, keeping it close enough that men could see and believe, and far enough that an ice spear could not reach easily. Arianne's throat tightened. There, she said. Sansa's eyes hardened. Good, she murmured. Then the horizon shifted. At first it looked like the tree-line itself was moving, darkness thickening, shadows crawling. Then the torches caught glints. Pale eyes, blue and cold, scattered like stars. Bodies, too many bodies. A tide of wights emerged from the trees, silent, relentless, their movement turning the field into a living nightmare. Men on the line hissed prayers. Some swallowed hard. Some tightened grips until knuckles turned white. Arianne rode behind the first trench, eyes narrowed, voice low. Hold, she said, and the word carried like iron. Hold until they're in the pit. Sansa watched from above, heart beating steady and hard. Let them come, she whispered, not as bravado but as acceptance. Above, Sunsorrow roared once, the sound rolling over fields like thunder. The white tide did not pause. It only came faster. The sky changed when the Night King came close. Not with thunder, not with cloud, but with light. An eerie blue shimmer that crawled across the underside of Storm like a sick aurora. The air thickened. Torch flame spent. Men's breath froze harder, falling like glittering dust. Behind the white tide, shapes emerged. Tall, pale, calm. White walkers. They moved in a loose formation, armor catching faint light like frosted glass. Between them, the cold deepened until even stones seemed to listen. And then the Night King appeared. He walked through snow as if snow was nothing. He did not hurry. He did not show anger. His blue eyes were fixed on Winterfell as if it were already a memory. On the battlements, Arianne Martell's fingers curled around the stone, so hard her gloves creaked. Sansa Stark's face did not change, but something tightened behind her eyes. An old fear brought back, not of kings or courts, but of endings. Jon Snow circled above on Sunsorrow, Longclaw's dark hilt visible at his side. The dragon's roar shook the air, furious at the cold that dared challenge it. Smoke poured from its nostrils, turning instantly to mist. Jon felt the Night King's gaze find him even from this distance. Cold, patient, intelligent. It was not a gaze of hatred. It was a gaze of certainty. Sunsorrow dipped, throat glowing. Jon forced his breath slow. "Not yet," he murmured. "Wait." The dragon snarled, offended, but held. Barely. Below, the first trench line flared as pitch was lit, a river of fire running along the ground. Heat rose. Snow hissed into steam. Men cheered, a brief desperate sound. The white tide did not stop. They surged into the fire. Bodies burned. Bodies fell. Bodies climbed over burning bodies, hands blackening, eyes still blue. The fire slowed them, but it did not end them. Sansa's voice carried down from the wall, sharp as a blade. "Archers," she commanded. Black-tipped arrows flew, dragonglass heads punching into white skulls. Some dropped. Many kept coming. Arianne's voice joined, fierce. "Hold the second line. Do not break." Golden Company men held their shields, faces tight, disciplined battling instinct. Northern spearmen braced, boots sliding in snow, eyes wide. The Night King lifted one hand, slow, almost gentle. The cold surged. The fire line guttered slightly, flame bending as if pressed by an unseen weight. Men gasped as breath froze in throats. The air itself felt heavier. Jon's blood turned to iron. He leaned forward on Sunsorrow, voice raw in the wind. "Now," he snarled, and he didn't know if he spoke to the dragon or to fate. Sunsorrow roared and dove, shadow swallowing the battlefield. Sansa and Arianne stood side by side on the battlements, two rulers from opposite suns, watching the moment the world finally stopped being politics and became survival. Winterfell held its breath, and the long night stepped closer, smiling with blue eyes that did not blink. Sunsorrow fell out of the stormlight like a blade. The dragon's wings folded slightly, cutting speed, and the shadow swept over the trench lines so fast the men below felt night pass over them twice. Pitch burned in long, snarling ribbons, fire snapping at the snow until it hissed into steam. Yet the whites did not care. They came through the flames with skin blackening and hair igniting, hands still reaching, blue eyes still bright, bodies piling so thick the fire became a bridge. Jon leaned low on the ridges, bandaged hands locked. The wounded wing shuddered once, a wrong beat that made his stomach drop. He forced his breath slow anyway, forced the calm into his blood like a command pressed against Sunsorrow's throat. "Small," he growled, teeth clenched. "Small. Cut." Sunsorrow snarled, offended by restraint when the world dared challenge it, but it obeyed the intent. A narrow lance of flame speared downward, bright enough to hurt the eyes, and carved a clean line through the first mass of whites. They ignited and collapsed, turning to burning obstacles that the living line could use for a heartbeat. Steam billowed. Men cheered without meaning to, a ragged sound ripped from them by the sudden sight of something dying properly. On the battlements, Sansa's voice cut through the chaos like an arrow. "Hold the second line. Do not waste arrows on limbs, skulls. Arianne's voice joined, fierce and sharp, born to command in heat and now commanding in cold. Pitch to the left trench. More torches. Keep the wagons moving or we die stupid. Below, the Golden Company held their shields tight, formation compressed by fear into something even more disciplined. Their captain, Sir Raleigh Duckfield, barked orders in a voice made hoarse by snow, and his men listened because listening was the only way to keep hands attached. The cold surged again. Torch flames bent toward the ground as if pressed by an invisible palm. Fire guttered, not extinguished but weakened, its edges turning ragged, its heat pushed back. Men gasped as breath froze in their beards. The pitch line hissed, struggling. Jon felt it like teeth in his bones. The Night King was close enough now that winter itself behaved differently. Sunsorrow roared, furious at the insult. The dragon dove again, throat glow building. This time Jon allowed more, just enough to keep the living from being swallowed. A wider blast poured out, not a full river but a heavy sheet of flame, and it slammed into the white tide, turning a section of the field into burning ruin. Bodies flailed, bodies fell, bodies climbed over bodies anyway, and behind them, far back in the blue-lit snow, the Night King watched as if this were a lesson, not a battle. Jon's jaw tightened until it hurt. He had killed a White Walker once and watched a whole cluster of whites collapse. That truth was the only light in this darkness. Commanders could be cut. The tide could be broken. He swung Sunsorrow in a tight circle, searching the edges, looking for the pale shapes that moved with purpose. White Walkers stepped forward in calm lines behind the white wall, their spears held like ritual. One lifted its arm. An ice spear flew clean, fast, deadly. Jon yanked on the ridges and threw his weight hard. Sunsorrow banked sharply. The spear tore through the air and struck the torn edge of the wounded wing anyway, grazing membrane. Frost exploded outward. The dragon screamed in pain and rage, a sound so violent it made men below flinch and stumble. Sunsorrow's wing beat faltered. For a heartbeat, the dragon dropped. Jon's stomach lurched with it. He pressed himself into the ridges, voice raw. Up! Sunsorrow clawed air, furious, and climbed. Uneven, wounded, alive. Below, the white tide kept coming. Jon looked down at Winterfell's walls, at Sansa's small dark figure commanding, at Arianne's blaze of motion on the battlements, and he understood with sick clarity. If Sunsorrow fell, the lines would break. If the lines broke, Winterfell would become a slaughterhouse. He forced the dragon higher, buying space, buying seconds, and then he chose where to bleed the tide. On the ground, the battle was not grand. It was hands slipping on spear shafts, boots sliding in bloody snow, men screaming names that were swallowed by wind. It was the smell of pitch and burning hair. It was the sound of dragonglass punching into frozen flesh and the wet crack when skulls finally gave. Arianne Martell rode behind the second trench with a small knot of torchbearers and runners, her horse flinching at every roar, her armor stiff with frost. She kept her seat anyway, chin high, eyes sharp. Right flank, back 2 steps, she shouted, voice carrying. Don't let them wrap you. Do not let them get behind the shields. A Golden Company soldier stumbled, a white's fingers clawing at his helm. A northern spear thrust up, dragonglass point driving through the white's jaw. The corpse spasmed and fell, limp, its blue eyes dimming to nothing. The soldier stared at the fallen body as if unsure it was truly dead, then moved again when another white climbed over it. Sansa Stark stood above on the wall, her cloak whipping, her hair braided tight, her face carved into command. She raised her arm and the archers released in volleys, dragonglass arrowheads punching into skulls, dropping whites in twitching heaps. When the cold surged and flames sputtered, Sansa did not flinch. Light the second pitch line, she ordered. If the first dies, we burn them again. Men ran with torches. Pitch caught. The second trench line flared, fire spreading along the ground in a sudden bright rush that made the living line roar in desperate relief. The whites surged into it immediately, Bodies burned and fell and became ladders. Hands blackened and kept reaching. The fire slowed them, but it did not stop them. It never stopped them. Arianne leaned forward in her saddle, watching the tide press against flame, watching the dead climb over one another like insects. Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed hard. "Let them pile," she shouted. "Let them bunch, then cut them down." Men obeyed because the alternative was panic. Shields locked, spears thrust in practiced rhythm. Dragonglass points struck and wights fell in jerks that looked almost human, almost tragic. Above, Sunsorrow's shadow passed over them again. Heat washed down briefly, turning snow to mist. Men looked up and felt hope like a drug. Then the cold answered, and the mist froze into glittering frost that fell like glass. Arianne felt that shift and knew what it meant. The Night King was pushing, testing, pressing the fire back not by extinguishing it, but by making it weaker. She realized then that this was not merely an army. It was a mind, and it was learning their tricks. Arianne's gaze swept the line until she found Ser Rawley Duckfield at the right flank. His men holding steady, his jaw clenched. She rode toward him, close enough that her voice could cut through the noise. "When the walkers step in," she said, "you aim for them, not the dead." Rawley Duckfield swallowed hard. "Aye," he rasped, "if we can see them." Arianne looked toward the blue shimmer behind the wights, toward pale shapes that did not hurry. "You will," she said, "because if we don't, we die blind." She rode on, torchlight reflecting off her armor, and for the first time the northern men watching her did not see a southern princess. They saw a commander, cold-eyed, stubborn, unwilling to break. The dead pressed harder. Winterfell held. For now. The gates shuddered like a living thing in pain. Jon brought Sunsorrow down hard into the yard because the dragon could not keep taking ice spear grazes in open sky. The wounded wing beat unevenly, and each wrong beat felt like a coin flip between flight and falling. The yard was crowded. Men running with torches, wounded dragged toward the keep, archers reloading with numb fingers. Panic had not fully taken them, but it hovered close, a thin crack in discipline. Sunsorrow landed with a crack that sent ice shards skittering. Steam rose in thick white plumes around its claws. The dragon's head swung, eyes glowing amber, and its throat glowed briefly as if it considered burning the whole yard just to vent rage. Jon slid down, long claw already drawn. "No," he snapped, palm pressed against the dragon's muzzle. He forced calm into the bond, rough and hard. "Not here, not us." Sunsorrow hissed smoke in furious compliance and lowered its head, the glow dimming. The beast hated the cold, hated the injury, hated being leashed. Jon turned away before the dragon could change its mind. Tormund Giantsbane barreled past him with a dragonglass spear, beard crusted with snow, eyes bright with savage joy and terror. "They're at the first gate," he bellowed, "and they're climbing like spiders." Jon's stomach tightened. The first trench was already a burning pile. The second line held, but the wights would keep stacking until they made their own bridge. The castle walls were stone. Stone could be climbed. Winterfell was not the wall. Winterfell could be taken. He sprinted toward the inner archway, boots slipping in slush, Longclaw held low. Men surged around him, Northmen, Golden Company, wildlings, breath steaming, faces raw. Someone shoved a bundle of dragonglass daggers into Jon's arms. He caught them without stopping, flung them toward a runner. "To the walls," he shouted. "Every tower." Another impact slammed into the gate. The iron groaned. Snow shook from the stone above. A distant roar, white throats, a tide, pushed through the crack like sound made flesh. Jon reached the battlement stair and took it 2 steps at a time. His hands screamed beneath bandages, but he did not slow. At the top, the sight hit him like a fist. The field beyond the trench was a moving black ocean. Wights stacked at the fire line, climbing over burning bodies, pushing forward. Among them, pale shapes moved with calm purpose, white walkers gliding like winter's knives. Their ice spears rose and fell in measured throws, picking targets with terrible patience. And behind it all, under the blue shimmer, the Night King walked forward slowly, never hurrying, never breaking stride. Jon's blood turned cold. He raised Longclaw and shouted down the line, voice raw. "The walkers! Aim for the walkers! Break them and the dead fall." Men heard. Some did not believe. Some did not care. Belief was a luxury. But those close enough to see Jon's eyes obeyed because they had seen him live through impossible things before. Below, Sunsorrow roared again, furious at being grounded, wings flexing. Jon looked down at the dragon, wounded, powerful, alive, and realized he could not win this by hovering and burning. He had to cut the commanders. He had to cut the cold itself. The castle swallowed its vulnerable with grim efficiency. Women and children were moved inward, not into the open yard where wind and shadow could take them, but into stone corridors where torches burned and guards stood shoulder to shoulder. The crypt entrance yawned beneath the keep like an old mouth, and Sansa Stark stood before it with her hand raised, commanding, deciding. Arianne Martell held the small wooden box they had found on the trader, needle thin as hair, death packed in velvet. She watched the stream of small folk move and felt something twist in her chest. Hunger faces, frost-bitten hands, silent fear that looked too much like her own people's fear when dragons had once flown over Dorne. "This is where the lioness strikes," Arianne said quietly. Sansa's eyes remained fixed on the moving line. "She already tried," Sansa replied. "She will try again." A Golden Company soldier stood at one doorway, scanning every face, every bundle, every cart. Northern guards frisked late arrivals with rough hands, checking belts and hems for steel and poison. Arianne's voice sharpened. "No one goes into the crypt with a covered mouth," she ordered suddenly. "No vials, no powders. If someone coughs, I want to see their hands." A guard blinked, startled by her authority, then nodded and relayed the order. Sansa looked at Arianne, and for a heartbeat their eyes met. Two women used to court knives now facing real ones. "You understand this," Sansa said. "I've lived under it," Arianne replied, "just in warmer air." A distant roar shook stone. Screams rose outside. The gate groaned. Arianne tightened her grip on the box until her gloves creaked. "If the dead get into the crypt," she said, and she did not finish. In Dorne, the dead stayed dead. Here, the dead might be called back like servants. Sansa's jaw clenched. "We will not let them," she said. Arianne's eyes flicked toward the godswood, the dark mass of winter trees visible through the courtyard arch. "If the Night King comes inside," she murmured. "He will come for something." Sansa's gaze sharpened. "He comes for everything," she said. Arianne shook her head once. "No," she said. "He comes like a king. Kings choose targets." Sansa's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes tightened. Recognition, dread, calculation. Another impact slammed into the gate. The courtyard shuddered. Arianne stepped closer to Sansa, lowering her voice. "If Jon Snow goes to face him," she said, "he will die unless he is not alone." Sansa's mouth tightened. "He never listens," she said softly, bitterly. Arianne's eyes burned. "Then we make him listen," she replied. They stood side by side as the vulnerable were swallowed into stone and the castle prepared to become either a fortress or a tomb. Above them, the air felt colder, and Winterfell's heart began to beat faster. Jon chose a small group because large groups died loudly. Tormund Giantsbane followed because he followed any plan that involved hitting something bigger than himself. Ser Raleigh Duckfield followed because he had the discipline to hold a line even when lines turned into graves. Two northern spearmen came because they had proven they could keep their hands steady around dragonglass when fear wanted to shake them apart. They moved through the outer yard, past the second trench, where fire burned lower now under the unnatural cold. The pitch line hissed like a dying snake. Smoke rolled along the ground, thick and bitter. Above, Sunsorrow circled, wounded wing flapping unevenly, breath steaming. The dragon roared once, frustrated, and then swallowed the sound as if even it understood noise fed the dead. Jon's bandaged hands tightened around Longclaw. He could feel the Valyrian steel's weight like truth. "There," Tormund growled, pointing with his spear. A White Walker stepped onto a bridge made of bodies and burned timbers. Whites piled so high they formed their own road. The walker moved calmly, armor catching faint blue light, spear held like a ritual instrument. Whites surged around it, directed, faster where it pointed, parting when it moved. "That's the leash," Raleigh Duckfield muttered, voice tight. Jon's mouth hardened. "Then we cut the leash," he said. They advanced in a low run, keeping to the shadow of broken wagons, to the dips in snow where bodies had fallen. The air grew heavier with each step toward the walker, the cold pressing into their lungs. The White Walker turned its head slightly, as if it sensed them. It lifted its spear. Ice formed along the tip, crystalline and sharp. Jon did not give it time. He broke from cover and charged straight in. Tormund roared and followed, dragging the spearmen and Raleigh with him like a wave. Whites snapped toward them immediately, hands clawing. One lunged for Jon's legs. Jon hacked it down, Longclaw slicing through frozen neck. The head rolled, jaw clacking. Another White grabbed Tormund's cloak. Tormund spun and drove dragonglass through its eye, then kicked it off with savage contempt. Raleigh ducked under a claw swipe and plunged a dragonglass dagger into a skull. The body collapsed, limp like a puppet cut loose. The White Walker stepped forward, spear arcing toward Jon's head in a smooth, deadly sweep. Jon met it with Longclaw. "Steel ran." Frost sprayed. The impact jolted Jon's arms, pain flaring through bandages, but the blade held. The White Walker's blue eyes narrowed, that same flicker of irritation Jon had seen before. Thrust again, faster. Jon twisted aside, the spear tip grazing his ribs. Cold burned through leather like acid. His breath hitched. Tormund barreled in from the side, thrusting dragonglass spear toward the walker's back. The walker pivoted too quick, and the spear tip skated off pale armor. The walker's free hand snapped out and caught Tormund's spear shaft, yanking hard. Tormund stumbled, snarling. "Oh, you cheating bastard!" Jon stepped in, close enough to see frost crystallize along the walker's lashes. He swung Longclaw in a brutal diagonal cut. Valyrian steel bit. The walker shattered into glittering ice shards that burst outward like broken glass, vanishing into snow. Instantly, the whites around them collapsed. Bodies dropped mid-lunge. Hands went slack. Blue eyes dimmed. A whole section of the tide fell at once, leaving a sudden clearing of dead weight and steam. The spearmen stared, panting, almost disbelieving. Raleigh Duckfield exhaled hard. "It works," he rasped. Jon's gaze snapped up, scanning beyond the cleared section. The Night King was still coming, and now he knew what hurt his generals. Jon felt the cold intelligence of the enemy shift, subtle like a knife repositioning in a hand. He didn't have time to enjoy the victory. He had to do it again. The Night King answered with mockery. He lifted one hand, slow as prayer, and the field changed. At first it was only a twitch, an arm jerking, a hand flexing. Then the snow itself seemed to breathe as bodies began to move again. Fallen men. Fallen wights. Corpses half-burned in the trench. Bodies that had been relief a moment ago became betrayal. Blue light bloomed in dead eyes like cruel dawn. Men screamed. A wounded northerner who had been dragged behind the line sat up abruptly, eyes glowing, and sank his teeth into the throat of the man who'd been trying to bandage him. Blood sprayed bright against snow. The bandager's scream died in a gurgle. On the wall, Sansa's breath caught, her face tightening for the first time. "No," she whispered, and the word was not denial. It was rage. Arianne, in the yard below, shouted until her voice tore. "Back! Back from the wounded! Kill them if their eyes turn!" The order was monstrous. It was also necessary. Guards hesitated, morality wrestling survival, then moved. Dragonglass daggers punched down. Spears struck. Men sobbed as they killed friends who were already gone. Sunsorrow roared overhead, furious, heat building. then sputtering slightly as the cold surged again. Flame that should have been triumphant turned ragged at the edges, fighting to stay fire. Jon felt it from the ground. The cold wall, the pressure, the way the Night King's power made even dragon heat behave like a candle in a storm. The dead rose in waves. Burned corpses in the trench sat up, skin sloughing, hands still reaching. A pile of bodies that had been a bridge became a bridge that moved, crawling forward again with obscene patience. Tormund stared, breath ragged. There, he began, then swore, voice breaking into fury. They're cheating again. Raleigh Duckfield's face went pale. We just killed them, he rasped. Jon's jaw clenched. We killed a general, he said. Not the king. The Night King walked forward through his own chaos, unhurried, as if the carnage was merely weather. Jon felt the truth settle like iron. Every corpse they made could be turned against them unless they broke the hand that raised them. He looked toward the Godswood. Winterfell's heart tree waited in darkness, ancient and pale behind branches. If the Night King was a king, he would choose a throne. Jon's blood went cold with certainty. He's coming inside, Jon said. Tormund snarled. Let him, he spat. I'll bite his face off. Jon didn't smile. He won't give you his face, he said. He'll give you winter. Above them, Sunsorrow screamed again, wounded and furious, circling like a storm that didn't know where to strike. Sansa's voice rang out from the wall, sharp and absolute. Fall back to the inner yard. Make them pay for every step. Arianne repeated it below, voice fierce. Move, move or you die twice. The living line began to retreat inward, dragging the war into Winterfell's stone. And behind the retreat, the Night King walked, raising death like a banner. The inner yard became the last mouth of the living. Men poured through archways, dragging wounded, hauling torches, stumbling over snow-slick stone. The dead poured after them, climbing walls, flooding through broken gates, spilling into Winterfell's heart with silent hunger. Sunsorrow landed hard near the well, claws cracking ice. The dragon's wounded wings sagged, membrane torn wider now, frost clinging to it like disease. Steam surged around its body. Men flinched back, terrified and grateful all at once. Jon ran across the yard, longclaw raised, breath steaming, eyes searching. Arianne met him in the chaos. She moved like a blade through bodies, her cloak thrown back, armor spattered with ash and snow. Her eyes were bright with fury that had found focus. She shoved something into Jon's hand. A dragonglass dagger, black and wicked. For the king, she snapped. Jon's grip tightened around it instinctively. He's coming, he said. Arianne's jaw clenched. I know, she replied, and I'm not standing in a crypt while he kills you. Jon's throat tightened. You can't. I can, she cut in, eyes burning. I can't ride your dragon. Fine, but I can stab a monster. Above them, Sansa stood on a wall walk with archers clustered behind her, bow drawn, torchlight flickering on her face. She saw them meet, her gaze sharpened, warning, approval, fear she refused to show. Tormund and Raleigh Duckfield formed a guard line near the Godswood archway with a knot of spearmen, dragonglass tips angled, faces grim. He comes through there, Tormund bellowed, pointing with his spear. I can feel the cold like a piss-poor hug. The air thickened again. Snow stopped falling for a heartbeat, as if even the storm held its breath. Then frost spread across stone in delicate lines, racing outward like living veins. The Night King entered Winterfell's yard. He did not climb. He did not rush. He walked through the broken gate as if it had been opened for him, pale armor catching blue light, blue eyes calm and unblinking. Wights surged behind him, but the Night King moved separate from them, untouched by their chaos. Sunsorrow roared and reared slightly, wings flaring. Pain, rage, fear. The dragon wanted to burn him, to erase him. Jon felt the bond strain like a rope on the verge of snapping. Wait! Jon hissed into the dragon's mind with raw intent. Wait! Sunsorrow's throat glow flared bright, then dimmed, barely. The Night King's gaze lifted, meeting Jon's across the yard. Jon felt that gaze like a hand closing around his heart. Arianne stepped closer to Jon's side, dagger ready, her breath steaming in white bursts. Sansa's voice rang down, hard as iron. "Archers, hold." She did not want arrows wasted. She wanted the moment to matter. The Night King lifted one hand again. The corpses in the yard twitched. Jon's jaw clenched. "This ends," he said, voice low. Arianne's eyes flashed. "Then end it," she replied. And Jon Snow stepped forward to meet Winter in the only way he knew. Steel in hand, fire behind him, family watching from stone. The yard became a corridor of decision. White walkers stepped in beside the Night King. 2 at first, then more, moving with calm purpose, spears held like scripture. The air around them turned wrong. Torch flames bent away. Men's breath froze in their throats. Tormund roared and lunged. Dragonglass spear aimed for a walker's chest. The walker pivoted with impossible grace, spear sweeping across to parry, ice meeting obsidian with a crack that made men flinch. The dragonglass held. Tormund grinned, savage. "That's right," he barked. "You don't like that." The walker's free hand snapped out, fingers like cold knives, reaching for Tormund's throat. Raleigh Duckfield stepped in and drove a dragonglass dagger toward the walker's ribs. The blade bit shallow but real. The walker jerked, surprise flickering, and the motion gave Tormund his opening. Tormund slammed the spear forward again. The dragonglass point punched through pale armor. The walker shattered into ice shards that exploded outward, falling like glittering hail. Wights around it collapsed instantly, bodies dropping in a sudden heap. Men screamed in startled hope. Jon didn't waste the moment. He charged toward the Night King. Arianne ran beside him, breath tearing, cloak snapping. Her eyes were fixed on the pale king with a hatred that felt ancient, older than Dorne's vendettas, hatred for anything that thought it could decide who lived. Sunsorrow roared behind them, wings flexing. Jon felt the dragon's heat surge, then weaken as the Night King's cold thickened. The dragon exhaled a controlled blast, narrow, precise, aimed at a walker trying to flank. The flame hit the cold shimmer and hissed into steam, but the walker recoiled, momentarily disrupted, ice armor fogged by heat. The fire didn't kill it, but it bought half a second. Jon swung Longclaw in that half second and took the walker's head from its shoulders. The body shattered before it hit the ground. More wights collapsed. The yard's chaos shifted. Less tide, more pockets. The Night King kept walking. He stepped through collapsing dead like a man stepping through tall grass. His gaze never left Jon. Jon's blood hammered. He knew this was the center. The hand, the mind, the thing that made the dead rise again. Arianne's dragonglass dagger flashed. She threw it like a spear, aiming for the Night King's heart. The Night King turned slightly, almost casually. The dagger struck his armor and skittered off, clattering onto stone. Arianne swore, furious. "No," she snarled. The Night King lifted his hand. Ice formed in his palm, slow, beautiful, obscene. A spear grew like a flower made of winter. Jon's mouth went dry. He felt Sunsorrow tense behind him, wounded wing trembling, rage building. He saw Sansa on the wall walk above, eyes locked on the Night King, bow drawn, waiting for a moment that mattered. Jon stepped closer, Longclaw lifted, forcing the Night King's attention to him. "Come on," Jon growled, voice raw. "Come for me." The Night King's blue eyes did not blink. He raised the ice spear, and threw. The spear came like winter's own intention. Jon moved as if pulled by instinct. He twisted, the ice spear ripping past his shoulder close enough that frost burned skin. It struck stone behind him and exploded into jagged spikes that shot outward. A spike grazed Sunsorrow's wounded wing. The dragon screamed, a sound that shook the yard. The Night King closed the distance immediately, faster than his calm walk suggested. He moved like a blade drawn from a sheath, silent, sudden. Jon met him. Longclaw clashed against the Night King's ice weapon. and the sound rang out like a bell struck in a tomb. Frost sprayed. Valyrian steel held. The ice did not shatter instantly the way it had against ordinary steel. This was not a simple fight. This was two ancient crafts colliding. Jon's arms jolted from the impact. Pain flared through bandages. He ignored it. The Night King's blue eyes watched him with calm certainty, as if he had fought this duel 1,000 times in different bodies, different ages, and knew the ending. Jon stepped in, forcing the fight close. He swung for the Night King's ribs. The Night King parried with effortless grace, ice spear turning the blow aside, then countered with a thrust aimed for Jon's throat. Jon ducked and felt cold slice the air above his head. He came up with Longclaw driving toward the Night King's chest. The blade struck. The Night King's armor resisted like hard ice. A crack spidered across the pale surface, small but real. Jon's breath hitched. He could hurt him. The Night King's gaze sharpened. First true irritation, then something colder. He slammed the butt of the spear into Jon's ribs. Jon staggered, breath leaving him in a harsh grunt. Cold seeped through leather where the spear touched, burning like fire in reverse. Arianne darted in from the side, dragonglass dagger raised. Another blade taken from a fallen guard. She aimed for the Night King's exposed elbow joint, the gap beneath pale armor. The Night King pivoted with impossible economy and backhanded her with the haft of the spear. Arianne crashed into snow hard, breath knocked out, armor scraping stone. She rolled, coming up on one knee, eyes blazing with fury rather than pain. "Get up!" Jon snarled at her, voice torn. "Get up!" Arianne spat blood into snow and rose, dagger still in hand. "I am up!" she snapped. Above, Sansa Stark loosed an arrow. The dragonglass tip cut through air toward the Night King's head. The Night King lifted his free hand without looking. The arrow shattered into ice fragments mid-flight, as if the air itself had frozen it. Sansa's eyes widened, only a fraction, then hardened again. She reached for another arrow, hand steady. Sunsorrow roared, furious, wounded wing trembling. The dragon's throat glowed, trying to build a full inferno. Jon felt the bond strain like a rope. "No!" Jon shouted, not to the dragon alone, but to the moment. "Not here!" Sunsorrow's fire would flood the yard. It would burn wights and men alike. It would turn Winterfell into a pyre and still might not kill the Night King cleanly. The Night King stepped forward again, pressing Jon back toward the Godswood archway, forcing him into tighter space where movement would be limited. This was control. This was chess. Jon's breath tore. His ribs screamed. But his mind was cold and clear now. The Night King could be cracked. The armor could be broken. The blade could bite. Arianne moved again. Not at the Night King's chest, but at his leg, low, aiming dragonglass where armor met joint. The Night King shifted to strike her. That half-beat of attention was all Jon needed. Jon drove Longclaw up with both hands, putting his whole weight behind it, and slammed the Valyrian steel into the cracked line on the Night King's chest. The crack spread. For a heartbeat, the Night King's calm faltered. Blue eyes widened, and Jon felt the blade finally slip through. The world held still as if it had forgotten how to breathe. Longclaw was buried in the Night King's chest. Valyrian steel sunk through pale armor that had believed itself unbreakable. Frost crawled up the blade, then cracked. A sound came from the Night King. Not a scream, not a gasp, but a sharp, brittle fracture like ice snapping under too much weight. His blue eyes locked on Jon's. For a heartbeat, Jon saw something there. Ancient anger, ancient surprise, and then it shattered. The Night King exploded into glittering shards of ice that burst outward in a ring, catching torchlight and dawnlight like broken stars. The pieces dissolved into snow and air, vanishing as if he had never been, as if winter itself had briefly worn a crown and then dropped it. Silence hit, total, absolute. Then the dead fell. Across Winterfell's yard, wights collapsed like a tide drained instantly. Bodies dropping mid-lunge, hands slack, jaws hanging. On the walls, men watched blue eyes dim to nothing and bodies crumple into piles. Beyond the trenches, the white ocean turned into a field of ruin. The sound was not dramatic. It was simply heavy, thousands of bodies hitting snow and stone, one after another, until the world was full of the thud of endings. White walkers, too, shattered, those still standing breaking into ice fragments that scattered in wind like ash. Sansa Stark stood on the wall walk frozen, bow still in hand, eyes wide with something she had not let herself feel until now. Relief so sharp it looked like pain. Arianne Martell stared from the yard, chest heaving, dagger still clutched. Her face spattered with snow and blood and disbelief. She looked at Jon as if he had just cut the sky open. Jon dropped to one knee, Longclaw's hilt slick in his bandaged hands, breath tearing out of him in ragged clouds. Pain slammed into his ribs now that adrenaline released its grip. He felt cold seep into bruises. He felt the weight of almost dying settle. He was alive. Above them, Sunsorrow roared into the breaking sky, an enormous, furious sound that turned into something almost triumphant. The dragon's breath steamed thick, and when it beat its wings, snow lifted in spirals as if the world itself exhaled. The blue shimmer in the sky faded. The unnatural pressure lifted. Torch flames straightened, burning true again, and far on the horizon, a pale strip of dawn broke through storm cloud, thin and weak but real. Men began to cry. Some laughed. Some simply sank into snow and stared at their hands as if unsure they were still living. Sansa's voice finally carried down, hoarse and shaking with contained emotion. "Jon!" Arianne moved first, stumbling toward him through piles of collapsed dead, boots slipping, breath ragged. She reached him and grabbed his shoulder hard, as if to confirm he was solid. "You idiot!" she whispered, voice breaking around the word. Jon looked up at her, eyes raw. "We're alive," he rasped. Arianne's jaw clenched, and for a heartbeat her fierce composure cracked. "Yes," she whispered. "We are." Sansa was already descending stairs, cloak flying, guards parting for her without thinking. She reached Jon and knelt, hands on his face for a brief moment. Sister and king and survivor. "It's over," she said, and the words sounded like prayer and disbelief together. Jon swallowed, throat tight. He looked around Winterfell's yard. Ruin, bodies, smoke, steam, and then up at the sky where dawn tried to exist. "It's not over," he said hoarsely, "but the night is broken." Sunsorrow rumbled, wounded but alive, and lowered its head as if listening. Winterfell stood bloodied, scorched, breathing, and for the first time in far too long, the living had taken a step back from the edge.